Wake Up Call with Benji Snead continues on 92.3 The Hub, the voice for freedom.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. I'm Benji Snead. This is the Wake Up Call on 92.3 The Hub. If you're listening to us on your way to work and you want to keep on listening, we got an exciting interview with the sheriff coming up. Then download our app, 92.3 The Hub in the App Store. We're streaming it live there as well. We had an exciting first half hour with former state rep Carl Isett. He's been heavily involved in this ongoing debacle of the Civic Center, notwithstanding the big debate over where it's going to go, but he's raised public concerns about the money, the accountability, the transparency, how we fund this, broken promises, all of these things. And fair to say, fair to say that county commissioners get a failing grade this morning from Carl. Now, he did say that Lubbock County Judge Curtis Parrish was the only one that's had any reasonable ideas, and that the rest of the commissioners' court has not stood behind that. He talked about what he thinks, at the end of the day, all of this mess means. Earlier, play that one.
These guys put a special interest before the county, before us, the taxpayers. Yeah. They they know that they were doing it because I explained it to them as the only accountant in the room. So I may not have been the smartest guy in the room, but I was the best educated in these matters. Right. So and they know it, and they broke the public trust. And at this moment, I don't feel like a single one of them is worthy to sit in the seat on that bench.
Wow. So that was former state rep Carl Isett, who's also been on the committee for the Expo Center, and he's calling for some accountability. We talk about these elections, and this really does have everything to do with it. He said earlier in one of the segments that he wished they were all on the ballot in March and upcoming elections, because he doesn't think they deserve to be there. But we've got 3 big elections coming up, right? Early voting for the city election starts this Monday, and the election's May 2nd, and then we've got a runoff for Congressional District 19. And then we have a specially called election for City Council District 4, vacated by Braden Rose, where we have former fighter Tim Green running there. He didn't have an opponent today, but Gary Bourne's asking the court to reconsider. We're going to find out, how that mess kind of all falls together, hopefully soon. So, speaking of elections and budgets and funding and big decisions, how we fund public safety. It's all about how we prioritize resources. And bottom line, everyone knows, and every candidate knows, and we've heard the sheriff talk about this, they all run on public safety, and they don't want to waste taxpayer dollars, which brings me to another elected official, which is, probably one of the most important jobs in Lubbock County. The sheriff doesn't just enforce the law, he has to build and defend the budget. And that's what he's doing right now. Sheriff, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm sure glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad to see this new show, too. So congratulations on getting that put together.
Well, we're drudging through it. Everybody around here has been great, and they're doing whatever they can to give me the resources, so I got nobody to blame but me if we don't go here. But you're part of the reason that we have gotten some great feedback with the guests we've had on, and you being here is part of the reason, and our goal to try to do something meaningful, so thanks for joining us. Let's get into it. Let's talk about first a little bit about yourself. How long have you been sheriff? Tell what's your past, and how'd you get to Lubbock and all that?
Well, the opportunity to come to Lubbock came in 1999, and that was taking a chance on a opportunity that could potentially lead to where I am today. Couldn't tell you that back then I would have thought necessarily this would be the final outcome. Right. But surprisingly, my opportunity came in 2009, and so we're hitting year 17.
I remember well. We covered your election when I was news director at the TV station, and but I remember you all the way back to about 2002. Now, if I get the dates wrong, I know you'll correct me, but I was going through Leadership Lubbock. I can't remember if I was on the steering committee or the actual class that year. And they always toured the jail, the old jail, downtown jail. So we're taking this tour, and you gave it. And I think were you a jailer? What was your...
At that time, I was in 02. I would have probably been a captain.
Captain, okay. Well, you did great, and you were walking us through and keeping everybody in line. And then I look up a few years later, and you're on the ballot, and I thought, I know that guy. He gave us a tour. So, keeping Lubbock County safe, that's your job. That's your number one priority. Obviously, you're doing a bang-up job at it if you keep getting the taxpayers keep sending you back to do it. But this is the season every year where you're not necessarily focused. You're letting somebody else focus on that part of it because you got to look ahead to next year, build a budget so we can keep doing it this way. So tell us what you're going through right now in your process.
Well, our process actually begins late January, early February.
Sure.
Just the scope of the sheriff's office in total. We put everybody to work preparing and looking at what's going on this year. Also, we're moving into. Last year we'd kicked off another 5-year plan. That's something I've had us working off of since I took office.
Helpful,
was 5-year strategic planning. A lot of that's to keep us all focused on things as they're growing. Second thing, is always, or the goal has always been, is to deliver a reasonable budget, every summer. And not have it just all of a sudden be one of those where, oh no, we didn't expect to see this, or we forgot we needed to replace
and we're talking
a lot
about,
of that.
We're talking about staffing.
Staffing is the big one, obviously, but we're also heavily equipment driven. And if we're not staying on top of getting that stuff life cycled through and changed out regularly, you can have some really big surprises. And, it's always, the goal has always been to minimize those surprises as much as possible. I know what the summer's going to look like. I know what the conversations and how they're going to go back and forth. But, at the end of the day, it's trying to come in with a fully justified and reasonable set of numbers that we've got to, and going back to the Commissioner's Court, they've got to understand are a byproduct of an ever-growing community.
I want to talk about that. It was always very interesting this time of year, and you were probably more on TV than normal in here when you start having these budget meetings. You haven't always gotten what you wanted, and you've been very vocal about that. So how do you feel about funding public safety this year as it pertains to getting what you need from the commissioners?
Well, we're in the usual pit that we're always in, which is, we continue to let stuff or not take care of things, and all they do is continue to accumulate, to snowball.
Give me an example of something you didn't get last year.
Well, so let's go for the last few years.
Sure.
We've been asking for additional patrol to address just growth. Patrol is the most basic function we do outside of the jail. That's your 911 call response. That's what we've got to do. We have year over year been asking for positions, trying to do it incrementally to steadily keep increasing that. And it doesn't happen,
What we're going to I bet you heard Carl earlier. I bet you wish you had some of that Expo money back for public safety.
and regardless of where the funding is coming from, in the last couple of years, what I have really kind of taken note of and gotten even more vocal about is just the fact that when we get into budget, it just seems like it's the tail wagging the dog.
Sure.
It's more about getting to a bottom line number than it is about any considerations of what's out there in terms of needs.
Very good. We're going to continue our conversation with Sheriff Kelly Rowe coming up right after this. You're watching To the Wake Up Call. I'm Benji Snead.
Wake Up Call with Benji Snead continues on 92.3 The Hub, the voice for freedom.
It's interesting. You and I have known each other a long time, and I may be older than you. I'm not sure, but I remember going all the way back to, I started in the newsroom right before Sheriff Cassie passed away. Yeah. And then we had Gutierrez, and did I miss anybody in between? and then but I knew you before that even. So yeah, time does fly. Point being, we've got it rigged around here where if you don't have a radio or can't take it with you, you can download the app at 92.3 The Hub mobile app and on your phone, and you can listen to us there. Because we've had some interesting content this morning with Carl Isett kind of blasting the commissioners for lack of transparency and accountability with the Expo Center stuff and all of that. And now you and I are talking about your challenge right now with budgets because they ultimately have to sign off on it.
That's it. That's the way the law is written. We just wished, we we're all in a position to work more cooperatively and look to plan better for long term.
So what are your top priorities right now that you're going to go in and ask for?
Well, again, we've still got a significant number of personnel considerations for both law enforcement and the detention center out there. We're burning lots of overtime on things that should fall under regular daily duty type stuff.
And that can end up costing us more than a new position.
It does. It's time and a half versus straight time. We don't have too many exceptional things, that we've been looking at. Like I said, personnel, we know is the focus. We do, however, have some considerations that have been in the works for a while, but, kind of what we talked about in the first segment there.
Right.
Things that, we have been talking about for years. I went in 2019 and approached several county offices in the Commissioner's Court in particular and said, look, it's been 20 years to our earlier point there. It's been 20 years since we looked at what the criminal justice system looks like in Lubbock, Texas. I said, one number I will give you in that 20-year cycle is the police department alone has doubled in size. So we've got to talk about, do we have the jail capacity we need? And right now, currently, the most current thing I'm on, and we're diving in to try to address is the pure load of trying to get individuals on street arrests into the jail out there. That's taking an excessive amount of time, just given limitations we have.
And that's an interesting dynamic, your relationship with the police department, because what they do in their day to day directly affects how and what you do in your day to day.
Well, it's our biggest. They're our biggest customer.
Sure.
And so again, these are the things I talk about when I say, we've got to get on these projects. Keep them going, get them moving. But the bottom line is right now, and with every year that passes, everything becomes more expensive. That is a message several of us try to convey.
Nobody's going to argue with that.
And you look at just county facilities as well. They assessed those 2 or 3 years ago, and we're told, notwithstanding anything at the detention center, there's $90 million in infrastructure that needs to get addressed.
Maintained.
And all I hear, and all of us hear is well, we know we've got that, but it's 2 or 3 years down the road. Well, it's been 2 or 3 years down the road for the last 15 years.
Until gas prices go up for fleet costs in your budget.
Well, fortunately, we budget for that, but we are seeing what happens when the spike in fuel jumps.
Yeah.
We've been planning for that since one of the last spikes a number of years ago.
There have been some fireworks between you and the commissioners in past budget cycles. What's your feel going into this one?
Low confidence. We've already been told to prepare for yet another no new revenue budget. That's
and for people that don't know, that means you take, correct me if I'm wrong, you take in the same amount of money that you did last year, and that sets the tax rate.
Right, and that's my understanding. Okay. I'm not like Mr. Isett was talking about there, the biggest accountant in the room.
He understands it, but I'm not sure people would understand him explaining it. He's very smart.
For me, in the position and the role I'm in, and this is the message I tell a lot of people when we're talking, right now we are in the fiscal year 2026 budget.
Yeah.
These budgetary decisions they've been making, fiscal decisions they've been making over the last several years, has us currently in Lubbock County sitting at what the tax rate was in 2009 when I took office, and we're trying to fund the entirety of the county, the sheriff's office included, on basically what the tax rate was when I took office.
And I will tell you, politically, I've always been pretty neutral because I ran a news department for a lot of years. But I'll tell you, I'm a lower taxes, smaller government kind of guy. So it takes somebody that knows how to make a case and have a confidence, especially when you're debating raising taxes to fund public safety. Well,
and that's the last part of your previous question. That's the biggest question mark going into this summer also. The county also just completed a salary assessment, which, not surprisingly, showed that public safety was far below the statewide median in terms of
what's being funded in Lubbock County for public safety.
Exactly, right now. Well, I'm talking individual, what our actual salary rates are. It's why I'm continuing to lose people to other agencies.
And the city addressed that, and so you're saying you're kind of
the city
falling.
Continues to address. We're either holding steady, and granted, there's been some incremental increases, but remember back to 2021, we had to go to the voters to get the tax rate adjusted in order to what fix, as it was worded at that time, to correct the disparity between the sheriff's office and other area law enforcement that was continually capturing people over for significant pay increases to do, in essence, a lot of the same jobs.
And I would think that trickles down to more cost in other areas. For example, if you're losing officers at a rate faster than normal or average to other counties that pay more, you've got a recruiting problem. Now you got to spend time on that, and that costs money.
Well, there's that, but more important to that, I would tell you, is the learning curve. These guys, these guys do not come out, just come out of the academy prepared to jump out there and go be a peace officer.
And Lubbock's a market that you don't get to hire people with a lot of experience sometimes.
Well, you're not going to get that, and you're also, like I said, the people we're losing, we have invested tremendous amounts of money into to bring their professional skill levels up, and they become the benefit of another agency, and we're sitting continually dealing with new officers and the time it takes to try to get them up to speed. And again, depending on the job we're talking about, those you say training time, but to become truly effective, you're talking sometimes 2-3 years of time in a role. The example a lot of times I'll give people is don't think for a second that we can promote or move somebody to a brand new investigator's position and expect them on day one to walk into an interview room with a murder suspect and talk them into a confession. That's a skill that takes a lot of time to learn to be effective at.
And pay has everything to do with that, and it's again trickles down and the budgets and all that. So, we're talking with Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe. We're talking budgets, we're talking crime, we're talking keeping Lubbock County safe. Let me ask you, Sheriff, a few years ago, I think I was still at the TV station, but we were doing a lot of stories about crime rate.
Okay.
And it was we were making all these national publications, and a lot of that can be skewed about who's reporting and how
it's reported.
And it seemed to be an ongoing issue. When we come back after the break, I want to talk about your perceptions. I don't hear that anymore. But from what your knowledge, is the crime rate going up? Is crime rate going down? What's causing it? We've talked about staffing, and then let's talk more about this budget process and what your priorities are outside of public safety. You're listening to 92.3 The Hub. This is The Wake Up Call. I'm Benji Snead. Download our app at thewakeupcall.com. No, let's see. I've been trying to get this right all week. 92.3 The Hub mobile app. It's in the App Store. It's free. It's live. We'll be back right after this.
Wake Up Call with Benji Snead continues on 92.3 The Hub, the voice for freedom.
Welcome back to the show. We're visiting with Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe. We're talking budgets. We're talking public safety. We're talking frustrations with the process. But you must not be doing too bad a job, Sheriff, because you keep getting reelected.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the citizens more than they know. That's a tremendous vote of confidence that we're getting things done and doing what we can do.
You're talking about frustrations, and you're not real optimistic that working with the Lubbock County Commissioners. That's no secret. Year to year, we've seen a lot of fireworks down there from you guys. It seems to me back when I would cover it, and then now I'm just kind of observing the mainstream media and how it's covered when I see this process. It seems to me every time we're talking about budgets at Lubbock County, even when it bleeds over into public safety, you're the only one on TV. Mm-hmm. And is that frustrating for you? Or?
Well, one thing affects another. And we're not the only office in Lubbock County that is suffering struggles out there. And again, I'm not here to tell any of my fellow county office holders,
Sure.
what to do. But again, there does come a point that I think we've got to have a unified message going up against, or going up to
Sure.
a commissioner's court.
Everything affects everything else. Yeah.
It does, and especially when our primary job in county government is criminal justice.
Understood, yeah. And it's the number one issue with politicians trying to get into office that they say they're going to do, and then they get in there. And I might play that video of your endorsement. Endorsement's not relevant now, but of your we might do that if we ran out of things to talk about. I doubt we will. Before we left for the break, we were talking crime rates and how we used to hear all the time how dangerous Lubbock was and all this, and I hadn't heard that in a while. Give me some perspective on any reports or anything that you see on what trajectory crime is headed in Lubbock County.
Well, it's in alignment with our population growth,
right.
And unfortunately, narcotics. Both the big three or big four top narcotic that are out there, as well as we still have very prevalent marijuana issues and those types of things. That is your central driver of crime. Period.
Right.
Is the buy, sell, and use of those things. And I tell people all the time, when you look at what makes up the population out at the detention center, 85% of that group that's out there is in there with some nexus to drug. Now, they may not be in there for the possession, but they're in there for the burglary, the robbery, the theft,
right.
whatever that they committed to support that habit. And again, we're what has been most disconcerting to me over the last probably 8 to 10 years is the amount of violence we're seeing with it, and
it's all tied together.
And you're watching the evening news. You see
right.
how often, whether it's sheriff's office, whether it's Lubbock Police Department, whether it's units assigned out to our anti-gang center, are involved in pursuits. Officer-involved shootings, we're responding to drive-by shootings and those types of things. That's the part that concerns me the most, because that has only steadily increased.
A couple of years ago, there was a bond election. I think it was one of the Prop A's. They always call them Prop A, and then you get them confused. To decriminalize marijuana. You were very vocal about that. I think we even did a commercial. I helped with the campaign, and,
right.
and so that fortunately it hadn't gotten worse because of that. But who knows what would have happened? But talk about the neighborhoods. Do we have the cartel in Lubbock? And
absolutely, everything passes through there now. That's been an established thing for a number of years now. There's no individual, just groups out there that are kind of operating. When it comes to the distribution of narcotics across the board, that's coming through the cartels from Mexico. And that's where they deliver, and where your street gangs, your locals
right.
here, of which we have entirely too high a number of. They're the ones that are actually doing the work here on the streets, but they all report back to now that base to get their products.
Are they operating in every sector of Lubbock? Is it? I don't want to get into the geography
right.
of what we're not doing somewhere else, but it affects pretty much all parts of the city.
Yeah, it's not. You can't sit there and say anymore that this stuff stays fairly well isolated in north and northeast Lubbock, has tended to be the case historically. We see and we're dealing with individuals all around the county, and
I know that you as the administrator and the number one law enforcement officer under the DA's office, you deal with a lot, and it's kind of broken up into different silos. But how do you navigate putting the budget together and then turn around and put a hat on where you have to put your uniform on and talk about this, like you said, officer involved shooting. Right. And do you feel a little schizophrenic sometimes?
I used to tell a lot of your reporters back in the day, because it would never fail that we would set up an interview to talk, and it works both ways. I might have an afternoon interview to sit and talk about something law enforcement related, but I just spent all morning dealing with jail issues, and it was just a matter of having to flip a switch in my brain to be prepared for the interview. But you're absolutely right. There is lots of moving parts, and it can be challenging from time to time to keep up with them all.
I want to play. Brendan, do we have time to play that? Oh, we didn't. I've got it right here. Hang on a second. I'm going to see if I can pull this up, Sheriff. But I want to play a video, or the audio of a video, where you you endorsed a candidate, and it was public, so this isn't even new. The endorsement's not what we're talking about. It's your message about the difference between who you would vote for based on who's going to be. And he was running for county commissioner, right? So I'm going to play this, and then we're going to talk about it on the other side.
Sheriff of Lubbock County. I'm here today in support of Kevin Pounds, who is currently running for county commissioner in Precinct 2. It is the campaign season once again, and I've had the opportunity over the years to get to meet candidates running for these offices, hear their platforms, and watch their campaigns unfold. One priority always rings true, and that is support of public safety. Unfortunately, I've also seen when these individuals enter into office and those realities set in of what a growing Lubbock County looks like, and trying to keep up those public safety needs, those promises tend to fall short. This is where I think Kevin will be different. First off, I know Kevin is a fellow first responder. He's made a career as a Lubbock Fire Rescue, ascending to the command level, which tells me many things. First and foremost, that he understands the growth, he understands the importance of public safety, and he understands the budget constraints that come with effectively delivering that service. This is where I think Kevin will be different, and it's why I would ask each of you to join me in supporting Kevin Pounds as the next commissioner for Precinct 2. Thank you.
All right, so I won't tell our listeners how many takes it took you. I shot that video to do all that in one thought, which is not easy, by the way. But the message is, whoever we put in there needs to understand it and needs to have a vision about how to get in a position to support the number one funding of the number one issue. And it's just number one to you. It's number one for a reason. It's number one to every person, because if you're not safe, quality of life is a whole different issue. So how do you navigate working with, I know you're an elected official, but the elected county commissioner group?
Well, it's always different based on the individual, and
you've worked with
I've worked with quite a few over the years, and that court has had its changes over the years, and typically we try to sort through problems behind closed doors. We try to. We try to resolve certain things. What's changed, over the last couple of years, and what has made it far more challenging has just been trying to get to some center point with regard to what is the focus going to be? Which direction are we going? Are we going to do this incrementally, or are we going to be trying to sort things out at the 0 hour at the end?
Right. So. Well, and we'll talk more about that, but I also want to get to, if we have time to get to, we built a big old $80-something million jail a while back, and you were highly involved in that process. And we're going to talk about it. Do we need more? Is it full? We're going to ask these questions. We're going to talk more about Lubbock County crime and safety with Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe coming up after the break. 92.3 The Hub.
Wake Up Call with Benji Snead continues on 92.3 The Hub, the voice for freedom.
All right, nothing like a little Billie Jean to get you going on a Friday morning. Welcome back to the show. This is the Wake Up Call. I'm Benji Snead. We've been visiting with Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe. First, thanks for coming. This has been very insightful, and I wish you the best in your upcoming budget challenges. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but it's gonna be a big weekend in Lubbock. We've got the Arts Festival tomorrow. We've got the spring game tonight. There is a chance of some severe storms. I saw on one of the morning shows this morning, but it's mainly north and west, so we should be in the clear. But let's talk about that, Sheriff. When we have huge weekends in Lubbock, people say there's nothing to do here, and it's because you hadn't looked hard enough, right? But when large groups in small areas in spike, like weekends we're going to have coming up, what kind of strain does that put on your resources?
Well, it just depends on where the events are happening at. The lion's share of that, typically going to be in the city, and so that we may be called in to assist, but the police department's obviously going to be on the front end of those things. But you take you use a football game as an example,
right?
That taxes tremendous resources, not only from the city, from us, and as well as the Department of Public Safety out there, just to manage those large crowds.
This is a question I used to always get asked when I was when we covering crime in a newsroom for years. But it was, what's the difference between the Lubbock Police Department and the county department? But I want to ask a specific question about that. At what point, we know that you cover the county, the city's in the county, which can be a little confusing, but when it's in the city, at what point, because I've seen this happen, at what point do you guys come in and work a dual crime scene with the City of Lubbock Police Department?
Well, and that's been getting refined down to where now, if you're, for the listeners out there that are watching the news, you hear a lot of cases are referred to on those high-end crimes, going to be referred over to the Metro Special Crimes Unit, and that's a joint unit between us and the police department. So we've solved a lot of those things that were kind of ad hoc back, 10 plus years ago. But to the big difference between us and the police department, you kind of caught it on the core as far as, jurisdictionally goes. But with the sheriff's office, I've got some unique responsibilities. First and foremost is that large jail facility out by the airport.
Let's talk about the jail.
And the others is we've got, we deal with everything that's coming out of the courthouse. So new criminal warrants, all civil process for the most part that comes out. And so you'll see deputies, and a lot of times when people may see marked units moving in town, that's the vast majority of their business is inside the city limits of Lubbock. But for a patrol response and most criminal investigations on kind of more standard stuff, that's going to be outside in the unincorporated areas.
I'll tell you a funny story. The only time I've ever dealt with a Lubbock County deputy outside of the city, we were out at a Christmas party. I think we were at Karen and Bill McKay's house, and my wife and I were leaving, and I had a flat tire. Here comes this deputy, help me change it. So I was just glad I wasn't getting pulled over for something else. But he rolled up there and walked in and said, "Need some help?" And I said, "Man, I sure appreciate it." Let's go back and talk about the jail. Right. So I don't remember exactly the number of years ago, but we put it on the ballot and passed a bond election. 2003, and built at the time, I'm not sure what the final cost was, but it was like $83 million, right? Because we were busting at the seams and the facility was run down downtown, and you guys just had to have a new facility and more room to put the growing number of folks you have to put in jail. Right. Where are we now with our current new jail?
Right. Yeah. It's hard to say now that thing's been open 16 years, but we all still do it, so don't feel bad. It goes
to show the older you get, the faster time flies.
But, well, what we are is we're full, and we're at the point we're back to housing inmates, overflow inmates in other counties. I talked earlier on the show about, pressing the county back in 2019 to start examining that. Unfortunately, it was time to look at expansion, so we went through that entire process. We went through and looked at the additional beds, which the numbers were somewhere around 1,000 that we probably need to get added, and we need to, those projects, and you've laid it out perfectly. Those projects don't happen overnight. We need to be, and that's why I was pressing back in 19, because again, I know we're looking at probably a minimum 10 years to get through a process to actually have beds online and usable.
Yeah, like Loop 88 wasn't just an idea a couple of years ago. It took years, and I kept saying this is never going to happen. But same thing with new facilities. You got to look down the road. I said this earlier, but I had a boss one time who first time this phrase was popular said, "You got to look where the puck's going to be, not where it is."
Right.
In the hockey reference.
Nice hockey reference, by the way.
So we got to do that. What's your process for crystal balling it?
Well, we're at the point right now that we need to get back into the planning phase. We've got to get that scaled down to a reasonable number. Everything, when you're doing that very preliminary work, the numbers are always going to appear a lot higher. We've got to get that refined down to where the architects and the engineers can get us to a solid cost, just like we did the last time. And then it'll be time, unfortunately, to have to go back in front of the voters and say, here's the needs, here's why we need it.
And it's more than likely going to have to be a bond.
Oh, it would have to be at this point.
And do you too early to tell whether we need a brand new one or expand?
No, it's purely expansion.
Got it.
It's adding to the existing one, which that one was always designed to be added on to.
I would think the tolerance for issuing more bonds to taxpayers would that a jail would be at the top of the. If we're passing road bonds pretty frequently, and they have a tolerance for that, I would think a jail would be no problem.
Well, and we understood back then, and we still understand it today, that's not the most popular topic to have to discuss.
Sure.
But we also have to look at, we don't want to get into a situation because the alternatives aren't good at that point. We don't want to be talking about ways we're releasing people early or we're doing things that don't get these folks that need to be away from society for a long time.
And I think an important part of that is what happens after you go to the voters and they approve your request, 80 million, 100 million, whatever it is, that you come back. And I remember you had a process there to hold yourself accountable so that they don't get a taste of the mouth. Say the price tag went way up, and I think it fluctuates, and I know the jail did too. But how do you follow the expense thing so that you can we can have more trust with taxpayers after they approve a jail?
Well, the lesson learned, and something I've tried to share with anybody and everybody that has a massive government process to go through, which is nobody will watch your money better than you will. And unfortunately, you see all too many examples of government, getting off into some of these big projects and then just kind of say, let me know when it's finished, bring me the keys, and we'll jump in and go. And then getting into all those excessive cost overruns and going over budget and all of that type of stuff. And I'm quite proud of what we did back then and how we stayed on top of the contractors and how we forced liquidated damages at the end of the project for delays caused by certain subcontractors or whatever the case might have been. And still just, and for a project that was nearly 500,000 square feet, we finished that with 56 change orders. And most of those change orders were a benefit back to the county. And a
change order could go either way.
And typically they go the other way, where we need more money.
Right, and it's not a reduction in expense. I'm familiar with change orders. They don't usually get cheap. It doesn't get cheaper with those. Let me ask you this. So, and I hope I get this question right. Outside of growth and I think recruiting might be a candidate for it. What has changed the most since you took over as sheriff?
Well, what has changed the most is the criminal narcotics industry. Yeah. 2014 was a change year for that, in terms of how much we saw, the types of cases we would see, to where they are today, and have steadily been growing since then. So
we talked about your not too optimistic on how this budget process is going to go with historical experience with at least this county commissioner court. And we had Carl Isett on earlier, giving them a bad grade on this expo process. But let me ask you this question. Are they doing anything right?
Note the long pause. I don't. That's really hard for me to say. Quite frankly, and I'm speaking here for myself. Half the time watching that commissioner's court in action and some of the things I see, that's just beyond the pale. Lubbock County used to enjoy a really great reputation around the state. People would walk up to various members, they'd know counterparts, and they come up. How do you guys get along so well up there? How do y'all do that? Because there's just constant, contention, in our county and everything. Right. And we, throw the quick answer out, which is, if we got a disagreement, we handle it behind closed doors and we move on. Yeah. But in today's world, like I said, it's totally changed. And I've got people now when I'm talking to me, what's going on in Lubbock County? Why are you guys making so much news? And what's going on? And unfortunately, that centers around that commissioner's court. Yeah,
I understand. Well, we're going to follow it with you. We hope you'll come back and keep me in the loop about how it's going, and maybe we can have the judge on as it makes news. But let me ask you this. So you sheriff in 2009?
2009.
Okay, and you're up for re-election?
On the presidential cycle, so the next set of elections, big elections.
You going to keep doing this?
I am. I'm going to go one more.
You're going to go one more. What's life after the sheriff's office look like for you?
God, I hope quiet.
Yeah.
I just want quiet. I don't want two cell phones. I'm ready to ride off into the sunset, as my middle name clearly indicates, and look for the quiet life.
Well, I can say, having covered it firsthand, it will end up being what I hope stays a pretty good run for you.
Well, I appreciate that truly. Yeah. And it has been a good one.
And you got a great reputation amongst folks that I deal with, and a lot of the, not just the campaigns, but the folks that end up in the office. So you're listening to 92.3. We're visiting with Lubbock County Sheriff Kelly Rowe. Download our app at the 92.3 The Hub mobile app in the App Store. Listen to it live. Listen to previous episodes.